got some familiar faces that are catching up. And I apologize for the interruption. I just wanted to get started and out of respect for everyone's time, if that's okay.
Fine. Good.
This morning we have leading the call and conversation with you, Director Philip Keith of the U.S. Department of Justice Community-Oriented Policing Services Office, shortly called COPS Office, with us this morning. Director Keith.
Good morning, and good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the call. We're excited about where this initiative is going, and I'll keep my remarks short and brief. I just want to thank you, though, for taking your time out to join us on such an important initiative that could literally change many things going on in our country today. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Keith, for your support and time this morning as well. And also leading the call is Reverend Markel Hutchins. He is CEO of Movement Forward and co-chair and co-lead with Director Keith on National Faith in Blue from a ideation perspective. But I'll let Reverend Markel Hutchins give you the full introduction and overview. Reverend Hutchins.
Good morning, and thank you to all for joining us. And it's such an honor and a privilege to have so many wonderful faith leaders from across the country and across faith to join us this morning for this wonderful call. I am, as Ms. Cheek suggested, I am Reverend Markel Hutchins. I'm the national lead organizer of the One Congregation, One Precinct, or One COP initiative. And I'm also chairman and CEO of Movement Forward Incorporated, which is a solutions-focused, solutions-oriented human and civil rights organization based in Atlanta, Georgia. Several years ago, we started an initiative here in Atlanta called One Congregation, One Precinct. And the acronym is One COP. And the whole purpose of the One COP initiative was to provide an opportunity for faith-based organizations to really become intimately involved in addressing some of the challenges that face communities and law enforcement across our country. And as a result of the success of the One COP program nationally, we were approached by a number of entities in the U.S. Department of Justice to really take this collaborative model of leveraging the assets of faith-based institutions to bring police and communities together to a national scale. So we started working with the COPS office and with a number of others to figure out what it was we could do to take this collaborative model that we've had so much success with in the One COP initiative and really move it across the length and breadth of the country. We came up with this idea of National Faith and Blue Weekend. This is, as I'm sure all of you know, this is an unprecedented call and an unprecedented conversation. It is really unique to have so many different faiths and so many faith leaders. Those of you who are on the line today quite literally represent the most influential faith leaders and faith communities and institutions in the United States of America. There are 42 states that have confirmed participation, and we specifically invited those of you on this call to be on because we recognize that there's some strategic benefits for the communities that you serve for you to be a part of this effort. So I just want to thank you and note that there are a number of archbishops and bishops and denominational leaders across our country. Again, Director Keith, there are 42 states represented. So before we get into an introduction of what the National Faith and Blue Weekend is and how to get connected and involved, I'd like to ask all of us to take about 15 seconds and say a prayer for police community relations, for civility, for decency. We are in an unprecedented time with the coronavirus situation, the obvious need for reforms around policing and how policing communities relate to one another, how we can draw them closer. So I just ask those of you who are represent various faith traditions to just quietly for about 15 seconds say a prayer for the success of our time together today and for our efforts overall. Please let us pray. Thank you all. And a special thank you to, again, to all of you who have joined here today. Our aim was to have 75 denominational leaders from across denominations. I know that there are a number of African Methodist Episcopal bishops here, CME bishops, AME Zion leaders. There's leaders from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Church of God in Christ. There's a wonderful representation from the Catholic Church, from the Presbyterian Church. The chairman of the executive committee of the Southern Baptist Convention is on this call with us. There are a number of various denominations and leadership from the Jewish community, from the Secure Community Network within the Jewish community. The Islamic Council of North America is represented. So what I'm saying to you is that this is a wonderful and awesome group of people that have come together with one issue in mind. So National Faith in Blue Weekend is the most collaborative police community engagement project in modern history. It is set to occur October 9th, Friday, October 9th, through Saturday, October 10th, Sunday, October 11th, and Monday, October 12th. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And National Faith in Blue Weekend is at the conclusion of National Community Policing Week in the United States of America. We chose the time that we did because we believe the time is now, with perhaps a contentious presidential election coming and a number of other things that we've seen across the country. We cannot afford to wait until another George Floyd situation happens like we saw in Minneapolis or some other tragedy before we begin to respond. And we are of the opinion that it is the faith community that should be leading the calls for change and transformation, both the need for change in policy and procedure, but most importantly, the change in how people relate to their law enforcement professionals and relate to one another. So in our time today, we're going to have an overview, which my team and I will provide. We're going to talk about the law enforcement associations that are involved. We're going to have a conversation around faith community collaboration and what faith-based organizations and local neighborhoods can do to get involved. Then we'll have an open discussion and we'll have closing remarks. And we promise to keep within the time frame that we have promised you. So with regard to the mission of National Faith in Blue Weekend, I'm sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulties. The mission of National Faith in Blue Weekend is to facilitate safer and stronger communities by engaging law enforcement officers and local residences through connections of houses of worship. We will power a movement through houses of worship where law enforcement professionals and residents build connections that break down divides, that decrease bias, increase familiarity, and spur ongoing collaboration. There's been a lot of talk in the United States of America about the need for police reform. There certainly needs to be reforms in terms of policy and procedure, but the greatest reforms we see are the reforms in relationships, how law enforcement professionals and the people they police relate to each other and relate one to another. We can change policy and procedures all day long until we change the way people see each other in terms of law enforcement seeing the people that they're policing and the people that they're policing seeing law enforcement. Until we change that, until we have relational reformation, we'll continue to see tragedies like we saw in Minneapolis and other parts of the country. But through the faith community, providing opportunities for police to get to know the people that they're policing, and for the people that they're policing to get to know their police officers beyond their badge and gun, we really can make a difference in the United States of America. So that's the mission of National Faith in Blue Weekend. National Faith in Blue Weekend is a collaborative initiative. We take the approach that there's more that unites us than there is that divides us. So there are many differences that we have. There's some philosophical, theological, political differences among those of us who are faith leaders on this call. But all of us want the same basic thing, for people to be treated fairly and justly and to have safe communities. So this collaborative approach of National Faith in Blue Weekend focuses on our commonalities rather than remaining divided by our differences. And so this initiative builds bridges and breaks down biases through activities and outreach among law enforcement professionals and the communities that they serve. National Faith in Blue Weekend is based on the premise that strong communities are built on mutual respect and understanding. Law enforcement entities and faith-based organizations in local neighborhoods are both key pillars in the communities. And when they work together, neighborhoods thrive. We've seen this model work across the country. There are no other organizations that have the resources and the influence of faith-based organizations in local communities. As I mentioned earlier, National Faith in Blue Weekend is an extension of the One Congregation, One Precinct, or One COP initiative, a program of our organization, the organization that I lead, based here in Atlanta. We're a civil and human rights organization that focuses on finding solutions and bringing people together. We take the premise, we operate with the principle, Archbishop, that as long as we're forced to some people standing in their corner yelling, "Our lives matter," while other people stand in their individual corners yelling, "Our lives matter," no progress happens. I think if Dr. King were alive today, he would say we would have to sit at a table of brotherhood and sisterhood in every local community across the country. And again, it is the pastors, the priests, the rabbis, the imams that are under your purview who really have the power to transform police community engagement in the United States of America, which is why we ask for and need your help. The organizers of National Faith in Blue Weekend represent every single major national law enforcement group and faith tradition. The effort is being convened by our organization, Movement Forward's One COP initiative, and the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, or COPS office at the U.S. Department of Justice, again, to organize the most collaborative police community engagement project in recent history. It really could only have been God that brought all of these law enforcement associations together. Never before in history have all of the chiefs of police, all of the sheriffs, all of the minority, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the Hispanic officers, never before in history have they all come together in a consolidated, collaborative way to host a police community engagement project. So this is historic, it's major, and certainly the faith community is a central part of that. To talk about why we want to work so collaboratively with the faith community, I'm going to bring in the executive director, the national executive director of the One Congregation, One Precinct initiative, Jarrett Foyer, who is co-chair of National Faith in Blue Weekend. Jarrett?
Thank you, Reverend. So one important question is why the faith component in Faith in Blue? And the answer is that there is no community resource that rivals the breadth and the depth of the faith community. There are, as you can see on this slide, over 350,000 houses of worship across the country. And collectively, they engage 65 million congregants in weekly observance. And these houses of worship are in large cities, they're in small towns, they're in liberal communities and conservative communities, they're on the East Coast, the West Coast, and everything in between. And collectively, they represent hundreds of different pathways to belief. So when we were considering how to facilitate connections between law enforcement and the communities that they are charged with protecting and serving, which, as you know, is more timely than ever, faith just stood out to us. And you hold the key to creating safer, more just communities. And finally, I just want to say on a personal level, how inspiring it is to have such a diverse cross-section of faith leaders that are gathered here this morning. And I very much hope you will get involved with this initiative. Reverend?
Thank you very much, Jared. Again, there is no resource that is quite as valuable as the faith community. To talk about the process of hosting an event, the resources that we have available, I'm going to bring in now someone that many of you have communicated with. Cecilia Cheeks is the National Managing Director of National Faith and Blue Weekend, who will tell you about a number of the resources. We have a wonderful central repository that the churches and synagogues and mosques and temples under your purview can utilize. It's a central resource for organizing, and they will be able to find everything that they need. So, Ms. Cheeks.
Thank you, Reverend Hutchins. Yes, and so we at Movement Forward on the National Faith and Blue Weekend team want to make sure that we create an initiative that is lockstep, turnkey, because ultimately change is what we seek, and we're not looking to impart the labor of such an initiative onto the organizations that have graciously agreed to partner and undertake this very important initiative and matter. So as such, with engagement in National Faith and Blue Weekend, the process for hosting an event, you simply go to you go to faithandblue.org. On the website, visitors can read more, fill out an inquiry form, and download a planning toolkit, which we will go into more detail later. And then after they submit an inquiry form, the National Faith or the Faith and Blue team will reach out to the prospective host to offer support and to help them complete event registration, as well as help them identify which activity potentially that they may be interested in hosting. And I'll go ahead and note, because I'm sure this is top of mind for many of us on this call and involved, we have taken what I think is comprehensive thoughts and detail to plan socially distant as well as virtual activities given the times in which we're living. And so once that the team engages with the coordinators of the event, they then are provided tools to help invite the community, to help spread the word, and ultimately, again, arrive at the change that we all seek. The event is then held using a checklist that's in what I consider one of the best toolkits I've ever seen, but I'm a little biased. And then after the event, the host submits a short survey and photos so that we can begin to build what we're calling a movement, because that's what it is. This is not a one weekend initiative. This is an ongoing outreach that is going to be launched by the weekend. So the idea is to get this feedback and all this additional information for the purpose of helping others to understand the importance and, quite frankly, the enjoyment that is had when community collaborates and reconciles and resolves.
Thank you, Ms. Cheeks. And to her point, there is a wonderful resource that we have put together for the faith communities in local neighborhoods, for your local congregations to be able to, in a turnkey manner, go and organize events. Again, law enforcement agencies across this country are working together. So their local police department or sheriff's office and some other agencies in the government are also very much involved. The toolkit that we referenced has several things that have been mentioned. Planning steps for sample activities. These are things that we have seen work to break down bias and build trust and collaboration between communities and law enforcement. We have seen these things decrease bias in both directions, decrease the bias that officers have when they're patrolling in an area they're not familiar with, and help citizens to break down the bias and that they have towards law enforcement professionals. So there's some sample activities in the toolkit, but again, we encourage innovation because your local congregations know their communities better than anyone else. So we welcome their innovation in innovating activities, but the toolkit has every resource that they'll need: a checklist for getting started, sample media advisories, examples of how they can reach out to their local police department or sheriff's office to get started, and frequently asked questions. The graphic that you see on your right is a graphic that talks specifically about what is in the toolkit. And as Jared mentioned, given these times, we have virtual activities that are samples. We have in-person as well as socially distant activities. There are media advisories to help folks understand how to announce to the media that they're doing National Faith in Blue Weekend, and other resources that are going to be quite helpful to your local congregations as they seek to organize. To talk a little bit about some of the kinds of events, I'm going to bring Jared back in and ask him to talk about the types of events that we have in the sample section of the toolkit. Jared?
Thank you, Reverend. So when we designed these activities, we basically had 3 building blocks for each of them. The first is that it should involve the faith community, a house of worship. The second is that it should involve a local law enforcement agency. And the third is that it should be open to the public. And from that point, we had a lot of fun coming up with what could be activities that would engage those 3 constituencies. And we really wanted it to run the gamut from those that were important conversations, such as the crucial community conversation, talking about the current state of policing and how to create more just communities, to activities that really engage the public, such as a peace walk or a festival. Each of these activities are designed with 3 options. So there is an in-person way to host them. There is a socially distanced way to host each of the events. And there is a virtual way to host each of these events. And in the toolkit, you will find steps by step to put forward each of these different activities. And we also want you to know that you're not limited to these. If you want to come up with something that you know your communities, you know your constituencies, and if local churches and mosques and synagogues come up with something creative, that's all the better. So we wanted to put these as ideas to get people started, but these are a starting point. These are not the only options. Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you, Jared. Again, in the tools and resources section of the web portal, which we are very proud of, some of you are familiar with Coffee with a Cop and National Night Out. What we have done is taken the best of Coffee with a Cop and the best of National Night Out and put them in the context of the faith community so that the faith community could again assume our rightful place leading the discussions in America about police community transformations and change and social justice. There's never been a time in history and never a significant movement in the history of the United States of America that was not led in or anchored in the faith space. And some of us believe very strongly that it's time for the faith community to emerge to the forefront of these conversations around police community change. So the tools and resources section of the web portal has sample media advisories that your denominations or your diocese or archdiocese can put out. They have other resources that the local congregations can employ to begin to spread the word in their local communities. Also on the website and in the resources section, you'll have some of the things that you see on your screen. There's an e-card that can be easily shared out with congregations and with your denominations and other leaders across your denomination that talks about what National Faith in Blue Weekend is and can be posted on your social media platforms. There are samples for t-shirts that can simply be downloaded and taken to any printer. There's some basic information about Faith in Blue Weekend on the front, and we left the back so that your denomination and most specifically your local congregations can put their information on the back along with whatever law enforcement agencies that they're partnered with. You'll see that there are also sample banners, and that can be posted. They can simply be changed. And there's a mechanism on the web portal for the text to be changed and customized to each local congregation, so those congregations can then share those things out in whatever means they see as appropriate. And finally, there is a wonderful one-pager that is a general overview of National Faith and Blue Weekend and tells everything that needs to be told about what National Faith and Blue Weekend is. After the events have been registered, over the next couple of weeks, when we start to get events registered, when we start to get the inquiries from local houses of worship, people who are ordinary citizens will be able to go to faithandblue.org to find an event. They'll be able to search for an event by their address or by their zip code or by a map. They'll be populated all over the country in every state. We expect events. They'll be able to get event details, the time, the date, the location, and the hosting organization of their Faith and Blue activities. All of these things will be available under the Finding an Event tab on the web portal. They'll be able to invite and share the event on their social media platforms as just interested community persons that want to see a change, that want to see transformation between law enforcement and community. And finally, if someone is searching for an event and there is not one close by, they will be able to then create an event themselves and invite their local law enforcement officers to be engaged and involved with them. So we're encouraging creativity on every single level, and people will be able to do that. I will tell you that we have a wonderful team of people led by Cecilia Cheeks, who you heard from earlier. We will be making certain that we're vetting each one of the events that are signed up and that they are consistent and are actually representative of what we're trying to create. Excuse me. Pardon me, please. I mentioned this earlier, but I want to show you the slide. Again, this is an incredible outreach effort from the faith-based, the law enforcement community to the faith community. The central organizers, again, represent every single major national law enforcement professional association in America. There are a lot of political differences, there are a lot of ideological differences, but we at One COP and our Movement Forward organization are proud that we've been able to pull these people together across their differences to work together around our commonalities, and that's what this effort is all about. So we have the three entities in the federal government that are most responsible for working directly with local policing: the Bureau of Justice Assistance, the Office of Justice Programs, and of course the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, whose director is on the line now, as well as every single major national law enforcement group representing prosecutors, Black police officers, all the chiefs of police in America, all the sheriffs in America, the U.S. Attorneys Association, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the Hispanic officers, the various police unions, just everyone working collaboratively to build bridges with regard to creating an innovative, significant movement of the faith community to assume our rightful place at the leadership table when it comes to this discussion. I want you to know that there is no charge. We're not asking for anything from the local houses of worship, nothing whatsoever. Through the generosity of FirstNet, built with AT&T, who is our lead and presenting sponsor, they, along with the Motorola Solutions Foundation, has given us enough resources to create the web portal, to produce the production, to create the toolkit, and to organize across this country. So with the help of AT&T, built with FirstNet, we are able to offer this wonderful opportunity and initiative to congregations across the United States of America without any charge or asking for any financial resources or support. So thank you to AT&T and FirstNet, as well as the Motorola Solutions Foundation. Now, here's where we need the help of each one of you and your denominations and your colleagues across the country. I'm very happy we have some of the most influential Catholic bishops and archbishops. I think I saw a cardinal. My favorite archbishop that used to be here in Atlanta, Archbishop Wilton Gregory, is on the line. But all of you, there are numerous United Methodist bishops, Church of God in Christ, AME bishops, my bishop, Bishop Reginald Jackson from the 6th Episcopal District of the AME Church is on the line. All of you have many, many congregations under your purview. We want you to do 3 things to support this movement. And I'm going to ask you to do one other thing. Number 1, inform the congregations under your purview of National Faith in Blue Weekend and strongly urge them to sign up at faithandblue.org to plan and host activities. Their activities can be as simple as gathering a group of people, young people together, to have a chess event with an officer or have a cup of coffee, whatever it is. We want every congregation across the country that is under your purview, those of you who are on this call, to do some sort of activity on those dates, October 9th through October 12th during National Faith in Blue Weekend. So that's number 1. We really need your help in making sure that the congregations under your purview know about National Faith in Blue Weekend and that you utilize your office to urge them to participate. Number 2, we'd like for you to designate someone from your team to be the representative on the National Faith Community Working Group. We expect that working group to begin next week, meeting weekly until National Faith in Blue Weekend, to make certain we're doing everything we can organizationally. We're leveraging our resources. We're leveraging our law enforcement partners to make sure that every congregation across the country has what they need to make National Faith in Blue Weekend a success in their local community. So we'd like for all of you to designate a representative for the National Law Enforcement Working Group. And finally, support the National Faith in Blue Weekend through your social media platforms using the hashtag faithandblue.org, faithandblue.org. And the thing that I'd like to add, as I believe I'm being inspired to do so, is those of you who are on this call, I see Bishop Sharma Lewis and so many of you all who I know well. You all have relationships across your denomination, and there are a lot of bishops and denominational leaders that are not on this call that need to know about National Faith in Blue Weekend, and we would love for them to be informed, and we need your help in informing your colleagues, particularly those of you that are in major denominations, informing your colleague of what is going on with National Faith and Blue. National Faith in Blue Weekend really could use your help. So those are the 3 things that we would ask of you who are on this call. That why participate now? The question has been asked. This is a short time frame. National Blue Weekend is scheduled for 8 weeks from now. But I would say to you that Dr. King would suggest to us, and those of you who I know well know that I've been a student of Dr. King and worked very closely with his wife, Coretta Scott King, and numerous others. Dr. King would tell us that the urgency is now. With the death of George Floyd, there is a call and a consciousness that is happening across the country. Meanwhile, crime and violence is soaring in communities across the length and breadth of the United States of America. People are using and misusing the tragedies that we've seen and the controversies between police and law enforcement to commit violent crimes that is really wreaking havoc on neighborhoods. And the faith community really has to step up. We can no longer cede leadership on these matters nationally to others. It is time for the faith community to become the leading voice on these issues. So there are 4 things that we would ask you to consider about why participate now. Number 1, resolution and reconciliation are urgently needed. Number 2, COVID has significantly impacted and magnified the strains between communities and the people that they protect and serve. Thirdly, tough conversations, tough mutual conversations about mutual bias need to be had. And people feel safe in local congregations. They feel safe to be true and honest and open. And we found that to be the case for law enforcement and communities alike, which is why we're employing and really pleading with local congregations to do just that. And finally, the community wants and deserves for law enforcement to collaborate with them to find answers and find solutions to the problems that these local communities face. Communities want and deserve solutions-oriented leadership that is bringing us together and not simply dividing us. So those are the reasons why we're asking you to participate now. There are some contacts, and I will go to our contacts, and then we will have an open discussion. I would love to hear from some of you all and answer any questions you might have. We have another 15 minutes together, around 15 minutes together. But the persons that will be directly responsible for organizing with you is number one, Cecilia Cheeks, who is our National Managing Director for National Faith in Blue Weekend. Cecilia's information is on the screen. You can always reach us at 404-605-7000, 404-605-7000. Or cecilia.cheeks@movementforward.org. Our Deputy Managing Director is a young attorney that runs our Indianapolis, Indiana office, Ryan Yarrow. Ryan can be reached also at 404-605-7000, and either Ryan or Cecilia or another member of our team, Jared or any of the others, will be happy to help. Again, we don't think there's a lot of help that's going to be needed. There are 350,000 congregations across the country, and we have tried to create enough information and resources in the web portal so that all of the congregations will have exactly what they need to go right out and begin organizing their Faith in Blue activities. So we're happy to now answer any questions about what we can do to be helpful. I will first go to Director Keith and ask you, Director, if there's anything that I missed that we need to, that needs to be addressed. And otherwise, I would love to hear from some of the denominational leaders. So Director Keith, is there anything that I missed?
No, Reverend Hutchins, you've hit the nail right on the head there. I just appreciate your involvement and certainly your leadership in this effort. I know all the listeners on the faith community, there's no one else that can change some.
What about the official Homeland Security and Safety?
Thank
The
you very
discord
much.
we're having in our
Archbishop
country.
Gregory.
So
Yes.
welcome an opportunity to work with all of you and certainly with this initiative, as we think it can reach so many people as has been discussed. And with that, Reverend Hutchins, thank you again for your leadership.
Thank you. Archbishop Gregory, he is the former bishop, archbishop here in Atlanta and president of the Council of Bishops for the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. I'd love to get your feedback and the other bishops. Archbishop Gregory.
Thank you, Reverend Hutchins. Yesterday, I was a participant in another Zoom meeting with the Federal City Council, which is conducting a number of similar Zoom opportunities with people here in the district in response to the COVID situation and Black Lives Matter and other current issues. What I'd like to do is, as we did in Atlanta, Reverend Hutchins, you probably participated a number of times. We had an opportunity for the police force to use the Cathedral of Christ the King there in Atlanta to provide an opportunity of prayer, public recognition, and then a social event to which were invited all of the representatives of the first responders. I think right now, because of the COVID situation, a similar activity probably is not possible at this moment. What I'd like to do is to speak with the chaplain for the police force here in DC, him, who is well connected with other policing agencies, if be our contact person, make sure that our parishes and institutions are apprised of this and supportive of it in the fashion that they can in the local parishes of the Archdiocese of Washington.
Thank you very much, Archbishop. And that's one of the things that we're very happy about. We have created virtual, in-person, and small group activities. So a lot of the activities that you will find in the toolkit are geared towards those small groups. And we've seen a lot of those things work successfully with doing, for example, a crucial conversation. People really want to talk to law enforcement, and there's a way to bring, in these congregations, bringing 30 to 40 of their community residents together with their law enforcement professionals. But the idea here is for the local congregations themselves own National Faith and Blue Weekend. And I see, I think I saw Reverend Slade, who is Executive Committee President for the Southern Baptist Convention. Reverend Slade, are you still here?
Here.
Reverend Slade? Bishop Lewis, United Methodist Bishop, you are certainly prominent amongst your colleagues. I'd love to get your thoughts, and Dr. Foster, any of you that have any comments or questions, we'd love to answer them right now.
Well, first of all, Reverend Hutchins, I would like to say it is good to see you again, as I used to be here in Atlanta. I am now in Virginia. I will tell you, I am excited about this because literally just this past Tuesday, Virginia Annual Conference held their first Virginian Speak conversation with the Attorney General Mark Herring, 2 sheriffs, and 1 chief of police, Kenneth Miller from Petersburg. And our conversation was on community policing reform. And so I just feel that you have given me another, not another alternative, but you have given me another wonderful idea to follow up on fostering the relationship and the partnership that the Virginia Conference wants to have with the law enforcement agencies as well as the Attorney General. And so I want to say to you that you have my full support. And as soon as I get off this phone, I'm going to be contacting my director of Connectional Ministries to begin to start working on this, and contacting Sheriffs Morgan and Decatur to follow up on something else. So I will tell you, I am very excited about this, and good to see you again.
Thank you. We
with
have
my UMC bishops as well.
Thank you. Rabbi Waxman is an unparalleled and unpeered leader in the Jewish community. It is so important that we have Jewish and Muslim and Hindu and other congregations involved. Rabbi Waxman, we'd love to get your thoughts as a leading voice in the Jewish community, along with Michael Masters. And then I really want to answer any questions, because I don't want to leave this call without appealing to you in the strongest terms possible. My team and I have done everything we could to pull together the law enforcement community, but we need your help in making sure that the faith community across this country, those of you, I know the Chief of Staff for the Church of God in Christ is on the phone. I talked about earlier, a number of AME bishops are on the phone. We want to get all of the congregations to do events in their local neighborhoods until these law enforcement professionals understand the people that they're policing, and until the people that they're policing understand these local communities. We'll continue to see controversies happen across the country. So we really, I cannot appeal to you in the strong enough terms. We need your help getting not just the congregations that are under your leadership, but also those under the leadership of your peers. So Rabbi Waxman, we'd love to get your thoughts as a leading voice in the Jewish community. And Michael Masters, we'd like to have a word from you as well. And I see Bishop Moeller and Bishop Jones and others. We want to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you so much for this extraordinary gathering. I think from the Jewish community, I called up, I took a screenshot of the slide you shared in the presentation with the 4 boxes talking about how, I think that really speaks so much to deeply held Jewish concerns about how urgent is the need for reconciliation and resolution, how the pandemic has magnified so many of these issues, and that I deeply appreciate the forthrightness about how there need to be tough and forthright and hopefully transformative conversations about biases to move into a new future. Jewishly, this is a little bit challenging. I very much appreciate that the weekend has been extended to include Monday, because the timing situates this right at the tail end of the high holiday season, and at the in fact not only over our Shabbat, our Sabbath, but also a major Jewish holiday. So I think there will have to be a lot of creativity, and I'm very heartened to see the breadth of support and to hear some of the other speakers, and interested in continuing the conversation.
Thank you very much. Michael Masters from the Secure Community Network, and we have 12 minutes. If you have questions, please put them in the box, put them in the chat, and Cecilia, our managing director, is going to, right after we hear from Michael Masters from the Secure Community Network, we're going to hear a little bit, we're going to answer some of the questions that are there, and some of these questions many of you have. I also see the Council on American Islamic Relations, the largest Muslim civil rights organization, is here. We'd love to hear from them as well. Michael, let us hear from you, please. Michael Masters. Okay. Edward Ahmad Mitchell is the Deputy Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. We'd love to hear from you. And then Cecilia, please jump in and answer the questions. If you've got questions, again, please put them in the chat box, and we will try to answer them as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. May peace be upon you. As was mentioned, I'm Edward Ahmed Mitchell. I'm a civil rights attorney, and I serve as the Deputy Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. I really appreciate everyone who put this event together, and thank you for having us at this wonderful interfaith gathering. I just want to say this is so important, because we all have to do some talking to each other. Law enforcement, the communities they are sworn to protect, and we all need to do listening. This sounds like a great initiative that will provide an opportunity to do that. But I do think that the one thing I'll note is that I expect that within each of our communities, there may be some pushback, especially communities of color, that worry that, this event could end up being performative and symbolic, but not lead to real change, and that there needs to be great focus on policy reform. And I think both things can happen at the same time. So I just think that as we take these ideas back to our community, I think we just need to be ready to emphasize that this is important, and it's also important to continue fighting for real policy reform and how policing occurs in America. And I do believe that both can be done at the same time. And I think it's so important that faith communities unite to demand change and to create better and stronger relationships with the people who are sworn to protect us. And I trust and hope that law enforcement officials are ready to listen and to change. As a former prosecutor, I have a great relationship with many law enforcement officers, and I'm hopeful that change will come, God willing. So thank you all for having us, and we look forward to learning more.
Well, and I can say to you that the law enforcement community is ready to have the difficult conversations, and that is indicated by all of them that are participating in this effort. And again, the congregations at the local level are the ones that will drive this effort most. And so, the local congregations are free to be innovative in terms of what they do for National Faith in Blue Weekend. And some of that certainly should involve tough conversations. I see Bishop Jennifer, who is the Episcopal bishop in the state of Arizona. We've not heard from any of our Episcopal friends. Bishop Jennifer, we'd love to hear from you and how we can get the Episcopal Church involved nationally.
Have I been unmuted?
You are.
All right. Well, thank you. It's an honor to be on this call. I'm doing a lot of listening. I think the state of law enforcement in Arizona and the Episcopal Church's presence in it makes this very complicated. I think we're very interested in hearing law enforcement indicates some interest in reform in order to engage in the conversation. And that's not something we have yet really heard. But you know, when I looked at the slide of what to do, you know, I'm really interested in the community conversations. I think there's some conversations that need to be had, and I actually think that maybe doing them over Zoom is and doing them virtually might actually be a good starting point, because one of the issues we have is people's immigration status in our churches. And so doing in-person gatherings with law enforcement is perceived as putting a lot of people at risk. But I'm glad to be here today. Thank you.
Wonderful. And I think you raised an excellent point. But again, I think this idea that there's some universal law enforcement force, there's not, you know, in the United States, there's not a unified policing. These policies and procedures and all these other things that we're looking forward to in terms of changes, they happen in local communities, in local neighborhoods. So that's why we are encouraging the local congregations to work with your local law enforcement, because there is not a United States of America Police Department. It is community by community and neighborhood by neighborhood. And so some of the police departments in Arizona and Tempe and in Phoenix and in other places are much more open to collaboration than others, but we cannot simply sit back and lament what has not happened. We have got to take the leadership and make those things happen as they need to. So Cecilia, there's some questions and I would urge you to jump in and ask them. We've got answer some of the questions. We've got 6 minutes. So Ms. Cheeks, go right ahead.
Yes, thank you, Reverend Hutchins. So I'll make it as quick as possible. What we will do, because there are many questions, but however, there are a variety of questions that center around some central thoughts. One of which was expressed just recently, and that is a law enforcement involvement. So that has been asked several times. But let me just say at a high level, we will respond to every question, create what we will call the FAQ document, and then disperse it back out to all call attendees so that everyone can have the responses, whether they pose the question or not. But the law enforcement community is involved, and we continue to deepen our reach into law enforcement. So I think that if that is the question, I think it's important to note that they have expressed willingness to have the tough conversations and understand that ultimately, you know, that this is necessary in order for us to move forward. One question in particular that was asked, and I don't believe was addressed when we were presenting, a form will be sent to you within the next 3 days that you can use, that we will ask for you to designate your representative. And so in that form, that's where you will be able to either provide the form link to someone on your leadership team, who will then indicate who their designee is for the Faith Community Working Group. And then lastly, yes, we will provide the slides to the attendees of today's call. So I think that answers at a high level the majority of the questions, but again, we will answer all of them comprehensively and provide that back to you. Thank you, Reverend.
Let me also say this, because I saw a question about this. This is in no way a political effort. And we're not going to allow it to be politicized. We are working with a diversity of people, a diversity of thought, and that is our only pathway forward. We have to reach beyond our comfort zones and have difficult conversations and have collaborations with people across the board. But in terms of this being political, involving any presidential campaign or anything like that, that simply will not happen. You have our assurances, and we put every mechanism in place to ensure that these local communities, the local congregations in the local neighborhoods, they will be focused on the conversations that are important to their local communities. What's important to one community in Los Angeles is going to be very different than what's important to a different community in the state of New York, and that will be different than in the state of Texas. So each neighborhood, each congregation will have and drive their own conversation, their own activities for National Faith in Blue Weekend. But our overriding premise is, as long as we remain on the sidelines and are reduced to talking at each other, to shouting at one another, there is no progress that can happen. But there is no limit to the good that can be done when we have the courage to sit at the table of brotherhood and sisterhood and work together across our many differences. So our time is 3 minutes away. If there are any other questions that we can answer, we're happy to do so. But we certainly would ask that you would again do the 3 things that we talked about, and trust that your local congregations will have wisdom and discernment. Number 1, please inform your congregations of National Faith in Blue Weekend and strongly urge them to sign up at faithandblue.org to plan and host activities, whatever activities they see as most appropriate, utilizing the resources that we have provided. Secondly, designate a representative for the National Faith Community Working Group. Thirdly, support National Faith and Blue Weekend through your social media platforms using the hashtag #PoundFaithAndBlue. I encourage you all to begin doing that today. A lot of you all have a lot of followers. Just to be able to say that you're a part of the conversation will start the buzz nationally, and we're going to do everything we can organizationally to make sure that this isn't an effort that transforms police community engagement and brings us closer together in a way that is needed now more than at any point in time in history. So again, thank you so much to all of you for participating. Please reach out to us if you don't remember anything else. Remember, you can always email info, I-N-F-O, @faithandblue.org, info@faithandblue.org. We'll reach out to you with a form asking you to designate someone for the Faith Community Working Group, and do help us to spread the word among the leaders in your denomination. Thank you so much to everyone for participating. We have ended on the time that we said. God bless each one of you all, and we hope to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Hutchins.
Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.